is 2023. The month, October. The day, Friday the 13th. A day that millions upon millions of people feel is the most unluckiest day of the year. Stay tuned with us through this episode as we delve into the history, the mythos, and the ideas surrounding Friday the 13th. Here we are, simple times again, but we're doing something a little different, something new, brand new, to us at least. We're going to call these little episodes the Simple Times Simple Sessions. Today's topic is going to be Friday the 13th. For me, when it comes to Friday the 13th, it's not that big of a deal. However, we are in a rare occurrence where the month of October, the harvest month, the month of Halloween, the scary month, however you want to describe it, contains a Friday the 13th, which makes it a little bit special to those in the belief or even just those who enjoy the spookiness. We're not going to have every episode of the Simple Sessions being Friday the 13th. Each Simple Sessions will be like a side story, maybe a little interview here and there, something that we can give you in between episodes in case we go on hiatus or in case we just have something to talk about. But today will be Friday the 13th. And I don't know about you, but Andrew seems to be a little nervous about this one. I think it's probably because I don't want to say scaredy cat, but I know this isn't really something that he's comfortable with. The horror, the scares, that kind of stuff doesn't really float his boat. I don't know what you would say. Maybe, he'll take a stab at it this year. But we're definitely going to make him sit through this one.
Yeah, I mean, here I am. I'm quaking and shaking and shivering. I'm a little creeped out, Marcelo. But, I know that you being here by my side through it all, I think I'll be okay.
Look at the time. I got to go.
Hey, where'd you go? Get back here. I'm all alone now. Marcelo just left me. What was that? What? What was that? I can't do it. Auxilio! That was a cry for help.
Damn it, forgot my keys. What's up?
Oh, hey. All right, so here we are. Simple Times, Simple Sessions, huh?
Yeah, something a little different. Something, like I was saying, in the little intro, Friday the 13th, just kind of a little different with it falling in October.
I mean, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the beautiful things of having a podcast is you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
And you said, hey, let's have this Simple Sessions, just something different from the regular podcast.
Yep.
And I don't know, it's kind of exciting. And Friday the 13th, now what a topic is this?
Yeah.
The last episode we did, I thought it was pretty good. We recapped a lot, and we were like, hey, there's a Friday the 13th in October.
Yep.
And normally you're known for October.
Yeah.
Halloween month. This is your stuff. You love horror.
I like the dark. Yeah.
You love ghost hunting.
Which is odd because as a kid, I was actually afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those, you face your fear and now you embrace it kind of a thing. So.
And I like what you said in the intro. It's mostly true. I didn't grow up like watching the horror films.
Yeah.
all that scary stuff. However, I did grow up, in a religious household that one would argue is kind of horror-ish. Some of the stuff that they teach.
I wouldn't say argue, it definitely is.
When it comes to like hell and demonic stuff and satanic stuff. I was exposed to all that, but maybe we could talk about that on a different podcast because this is a simple session.
So you kind of grew up on like the other side of what we're gonna delve into, I guess you could say.
Pretty much.
You were kind of like in like the, I don't want to say anti Friday the 13th, but like the anti dark, I guess you could say. Like
I was
the light side.
From all of that.
Yeah.
I was like, what's the word?
Sheltered.
Grew up in a sheltered household, basically. Yeah. But I'm here with the expert.
Well, yeah,
Marcelo.
If you want to say expert, I'm not gonna. I don't want to sound too big of myself, but I mean, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy it.
Well, you know more than me, so
yeah.
So, I mean, what have you got for us today?
So then, in other words, this is kind of like me introducing you into Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I guess I'm all ears. I'm here to learn, teach. And by the way, I apologize to our listeners. My voice normally doesn't sound like this. I just got like a bad sore throat, so I sound a little hoarse.
He's trying to fit in with the theme.
Yeah. I got sick.
What would you say, unconsciously? No. Would that be? Yeah, so, like subconsciously, unconsciously, kind of got himself prepared for the month of October.
So I could do the creepy voice even better. But I do apologize. I don't normally sound like this.
So Andrew, do you have any idea of the origins even, or like how all this began?
Not really. This is something that I never really thought about. It was just something in like pop culture that was like, oh, Friday the 13th.
Right, yeah.
There were scary movies about Friday the 13th. And, on a Friday the 13th, if you go to your local tattoo shop, you can get a Friday the 13th inspired tattoo for $13.
Right, yeah.
Things like that, it was just a thing that was tossed around. I never really thought about it. I heard about all the superstitious stuff, but I don't know the origins.
Well, I mean, Friday the 13th, believe it or not, the superstition is actually supposed to be dating back pretty far. They actually think that it might have even gone back to Norse mythology.
Whoa!
Back in what would you say that would be, like the, I don't know, North mythology? What would the North mythology be? Would that be like second century? That'd be like pretty early on.
Possibly.
But yeah, the Friday the 13th superstition is said to date back pretty far. Mm-hmm. In North mythology, there were 12 gods who had dinner at Valhalla, but they were interrupted by a 13th guest. But that 13th guest was actually a name that you may be familiar with.
Ooh. The
mischievous Loki.
Oh, like the Marvel movies.
Exactly. And he was actually inspired by by an actual guy named Loki. Oh. It is said that Loki tricked I'm assuming his name's Hodor, which is kind of like the guy from Game of Thrones, but it's spelled Hodr, but there's like different accents above it, and these are Norse names, so I don't know exactly how to say it. But he is the blind god of winter. So Loki tricked the blind god of winter into shooting his own brother Balder, the god of summer, with a magical spear tipped with mistletoe, his own version of kryptonite. The number 13 was branded as unlucky because of the loss caused by the unwanted 13th guest. And that is the earliest thought, idea,
story type thing.
Yeah, that's just the earliest piece of evidence that they have as to the beginning of the whole 13th idea. Not even just Friday the 13th, but just the 13th idea in general.
Interesting.
And you'll notice that a lot amongst going from North mythology to try to present time. You'll start noticing that the number 13 is kind of comes in every once in a while as the unlucky, or as like the abrupt stop, like they usually say that number 12 is kind of like the number for completion. You know, they use that for like, you've got 12 months in a year. You've got the 12 signs of the zodiac. There's 12 inches in a foot. The 12 sons of Odin, if you want to go back to Norse mythology. You know, you can even go to Greek mythology and say the 12 labors of Hercules, 12 gods of Olympus, the 12 Hindu shrines, 12 successors of Muhammad, 12 tribes of Israel. So a lot of like religious and mythological. I don't want to call it mythological in case they actually happen, but either way, there's a lot of numbers of 12.
So yeah, so you're saying 12 is like this number that's used throughout different like religions, cultures, and even different eras of ancient history.
Correct.
There's this number 12 that keeps cropping up, and then the idea is what, one more is like the unwanted guest.
Pretty much, it would be like the 12 bit the completion. You know, it's an even number.
12 months.
12 months. Like I said, even on the clock, if you look, 1 to 12, it's a complete circle, and then you add the 13th, and that's one off.
That's one off.
It makes it kind of
bad.
Yeah. So, the number 13 bears the stigma of misfortune and bad luck just because of it being the odd man out, I guess you could say.
I see. And one thing that I did quickly read as, we're preparing for Friday the 13th episode, and you mentioned it, is like, me coming from that Christian background.
Yeah.
Jesus is, the Last Supper, that painting of the Last Supper.
There were 13 people at that Last Supper, right?
Right, because Jesus had his 12 disciples.
Yeah.
Plus Jesus, 13.
Right.
It's kind of this idea of, that's why it was so unlucky, because after the Last Supper, that was like, right after that is when, the story goes, Jesus got betrayed by Judas, and then which led to his death.
Right.
And so that 13 number was there, making it unlucky.
Well, speaking of Christianity, pre-Christianity, apparently Friday the 13th was actually considered a powerful day for feminine energy and creativity. So there is positivity behind it.
Oh, interesting.
But before the patriarchy, or doesn't, but then again, doesn't the patriarchy kind of ruin everything? Friday the 13th was considered the day of the goddess, a day of worship, the day of a divine feminine that lives in us all. 13 is naturally a female number. It represents the average number of a woman's cycle in a year, and it is the number of annual cycles of the moon, commonly thought as a female energy. But people are wondering, like, why 13? Why is a number as unlucky as it can be? And why is it that Friday is the day? I mean, Fridays can be considered either the 5th, possibly even the 6th day of the week. Depending on how
we got 13. And we can just kind of establish, 13 is an unlucky number, but why Friday?
Right. Well, then it also kind of ties into Christianity as well. Friday comes in the mix because, according to the early accounts, Jesus was crucified on Friday.
Right. Hence, in Christianity, Good Friday is a holy day.
Exactly. In America, though, during the late 19th century, Friday was the day when all executions were held. So not even like the Salem witch trials, all that stuff. All of those executions were held on Fridays specifically.
Oh, okay. So Friday is known for like Death Day, more or less.
Yeah, I get. Yeah. You could think of it. Yeah. Friday the 13th essentially became more unlucky by combining the two unlucky things, number 13 and Fridays. However, the first reference of Friday the 13th doesn't show up until 1913.
1913. Wow.
Yeah. So, also, and here's another little fun fact. I guess even the Knights of Templar had an origin for Friday the 13th, had their own little origin. It's been rumored that Friday the 13th superstition came from Friday, October 13th, 1307, the day on which the Knights Templar were wiped out by King Philip of France. But this is apparently just a coincidence, since there is no evidence at all that is exactly where it came from. But I mean, that is a pretty good coincidence. October, the harvest month, as we know later on as, All Hallows Eve, the month
Right.
of All Hallows Eve,
Mm-hmm.
the day 13, which fell on a Friday, which kind of like today, and the year 1307.
Is that 13 in there?
So I want to talk a little more about just kind of like showing you like the everyday life
Right.
of how you can find like this superstition, and some of it you may not even really realize or recognize, but on buildings, most buildings that go above a 13th floor don't
Right.
have the number 13.
This is very common in like Las Vegas, the casinos.
Exactly.
With the hotels, they don't make a 13th floor.
Right. And it's not that it doesn't have a 13th floor. They just don't number it as a 13th. They'll go from 12 to 14 and then
Right.
continue on.
Right.
They'll even do that with like room numbers. So even if you don't have a 13th floor on the building, you can have 1,300 rooms, and sometimes, and most of the times, they won't have that. They'll go from the 1200s script right to the 1400s.
I have, for those of you listening in, I'm a mailman. But yeah, when I deliver the mail, there are certain apartment buildings that go units like, let's say, 1 through 30. There is no unit 13.
And actually, what's crazy is that one of the first condos that I remember living in was Unit 113.
That's where it all went downhill.
Right, exactly.
You were living in the unlucky.
But speaking of, you being his postman and everything, even street addresses, a lot of street addresses will skip 13. Airports will even skip 13th gate. And then people just, planning big events will avoid either the day 13 or Friday the 13th especially, just so they don't get any kind of bad luck or risk it at all.
And that's just superstition, right? Because it's like, objectively, 13 is just a number. But there's so much superstition around this number that we tend to just avoid it at all costs.
Yeah. And shocking enough, it's actually a lot of this Friday the 13th superstition is actually only a Western thing, especially in America. If you go like towards like Greece and maybe even like Spanish speaking countries, they actually think that the unluckiest day is Tuesday the 13th instead of Friday.
But they still have the 13 in there.
Right, yeah. Italy, Friday the 17th is lucky.
Oh.
But the reason for that is when you rearrange the Roman numeral 17, you can create the word vixi, which translates to my life is over from Latin.
Ah.
So, I mean...
so, once again, it's attributed to, like, death.
Yeah.
So, it's something... It's always attached to this idea of death.
Right. The end or something.
The
like going
end,
back
it's
to like the
over.
gallows and executions and stuff. It's all, leading up to the end. And then in some Eastern countries, 13 is actually seen as a lucky number. Like in Hinduism, 13th is dedicated to the Lord Shiva. In Thailand, April 13th is the new year, and Songkran is celebrated. The new year represents purification and washing away one's sins and bad luck. Then as a result, 13th is pronounced as Shishan in Mandarin, which can mean definitely vibrant. And I apologize if I butchered the Mandarin. I don't speak Mandarin, but
No, you're too Western.
yeah. But yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy how you grow up in one culture, which we would say is Western culture,
Yeah.
and 13 is like bad. Friday the 13th is bad, but then you look at others, and it's like, oh, you can actually make it a positive thing. And I mean, then you start realizing that could just be a day. It's a lot of just more coincidental kind of stuff. But over here, we tend to have a lot more fun with it, I guess you could say.
I was just thinking that. It's kind of like a fun, Western cultural thing. I mean, I guess it's just kind of fun to go along with it.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
it is.
you
Yeah,
agree?
I mean, it's like Halloween. You can deep dive, into the meanings behind Halloween, but at the end, if you just want to just throw a Halloween party and just kind of have fun with, the spookiness of it, then you could just do that, and no one will, give you, two flying fucks about it, basically. So yeah, I mean, it's
Speaking of that, kind of like my upbringing, it was no Halloween here.
right. Yeah,
But then as you get older, or I got older, I'm like, people just dress up.
Yeah.
And they eat a bunch of candy. And so I took that direction with my kids. It's like, yeah, we dress up, and we go trick-or-treating. It's fun to dress up and get candy. And we're not necessarily sacrificing cats or whatever.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, well, especially since I think I want to say 1980, the best way that a lot of people, celebrate Friday the 13th is by having a movie marathon with Friday the 13th.
Ooh.
There's
sounds like maybe you have some information on this.
I do. When it comes to movies and like Friday the 13th, I was never really a big fan of them. A few of them were pretty good. But I mean, there were just so many. It's probably that Friday the 13th franchise became like the longest running, or I think I think it is like the longest running horror franchise. I think there's something like 15 of them total, not including remakes.
Wow.
Just straight up sequels. A lot of people would say that the number one, which according to Rotten Tomatoes as well, the best one is the original Friday the 13th. It took place in 1980. For those that aren't familiar with it, but I mean, I know there's people out there like Andrew, but for those of you that are like me, you know very well what Friday the 13th is about. But it was according to Rotten Tomatoes, Crystal Lake's history of murder doesn't deter counselors from setting up a summer camp in the woodsy area. Superstitious locals warn against it, but the fresh-faced young people, Jack, Alice, Bill, Marcy, and Ned, pay little heed to the old-timers. Then they find themselves stalked by a brutal killer as they're slashed, shot, and stabbed. The counselors struggle to stay alive against a merciless opponent.
Sounds eerie.
It is by today. If you were to make that kind of movie the way that they shot it, make it essentially just literally shot for shot remake of that and make it today, it won't really be that creepy. I don't think so. I think it would be kind of a mediocre kind of a thing. But
why do you say that?
Well, today you've got so many different kinds of horror. We're solely based on more effects, I guess you could say, when it comes to horror. You want the jump scares and stuff like that. Where I don't think the Friday the 13th really had jump scares. It was more imaginative, and
okay.
I also think that the original Friday the 13th kind of took the idea of 70s, 60s, 70s. Like if you talk to your parents. Maybe not all of them, but I mean, there's a good chunk of probably maybe like middle suburbia kind of parents that would go to summer camp as a kid, and their parents would send them out as like, hey, this is a great way to do it. I think they even still have summer camps, and it would just be a place where kids can go and build stuff and just kind of have fun.
Right.
And what this movie did is it took the very innocent idea of, hey, let's open up this. I mean, of course, you had camp counselors that got there before and started doing very non-innocent type stuff.
Oh.
But it just became like, oh shit, maybe we aren't so safe sending our kids to these summer camps. And I think that kind of put that idea in a lot of people's heads of, oh shit, this is a new fear, like a new fear being unlocked,
So you're saying pre this film, things were more like happy-go-lucky, hunky-dory. But then this film comes out, and then it's like now in everyone's minds, like, what could happen at these summer camps?
Yeah, no one ever really probably gave it two thoughts. So prior to like the 70s of
more psychological.
Yeah, and
is that what you were saying about the the movies back then, they're more psychological, like
Yeah.
it's in your head.
Yeah.
Where nowadays it's more like, it seems like the horror and the gore, it's like in your face.
Yeah. It's
Where in like older films, it's like maybe off screen and you kind of have to feel it
exactly
in your own head.
exactly.
Which is why I like the old Twilight series.
Yes.
I don't know if you watched
Yeah, the Twilight Zones.
Twilight Zone?
Yes.
Like, it was pretty much horror.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was.
The stories, because it kind of leaves you thinking about, oh, I never thought about this in this way before, or never thought about that. And it's like, it's creepy.
Yeah.
Even though what you see, it's not creepy at all. It's not like you don't see like slashing and
It's
violence or anything graphic, but you're left with like a psychological type of mystery and fear almost.
Yeah, it's almost like how would I say it? It's like, since you have to use your imagination, you can even like interpret your own fears, your own personal fears, and mix that into what the villain, the monster, whoever it is that's behind the stories that you're reading or seeing or whatever it is. Like, you can kind of interpret that so you can make it your own. Whereas now, like, it's like we were saying, everything, like, people have to see it now. Like, they want to see it. To show, like, like a good way of doing it. And for me personally, kind of like showing how you if you were to do it now, how it would get like negative reviews. If you look at like Psycho.
Right.
Did you ever see the movie Psycho?
Alfred Hitchcock?
Yes.
No, not yet.
So that was also a movie where all of the killings and all of, like, the horror moments took place essentially behind the camera.
Right.
What you were seeing was the eye through like the eyes of the killer. So you never saw who the killer was. You don't know what the killer was, but you were going along for the ride. So, and then of course at the end it showed the reveal, but you had to wait till the end. You had to think about it. Now they try to do that again with a movie called The Babadook. It's on Netflix. I think it should still be there. It's somewhere on streaming. To me, it wasn't that great because it kind of showed you like like what we're talking about, where like now you need to see it like in your face. The Babadook was a story where the monster, you only saw it for maybe 5 minutes, if that. The rest of the time, it was like stuff in the background, and it's good. Yeah, it's kind of cool to see it that way, but it doesn't give you the scare that you're really kind of looking for stuff like that. And I mean, I will give it to Friday the 13th, going back to that. That's what they did perfectly in this. All the killings were through the eyes of the killer. All the slashings, everything. I mean, even when the killer would approach one of the camp counselors out in the woods, you would see the fear on that counselor's face, and the camera would just come closer as if you are the monster, as if you are the one that's there doing the killing.
There are a few modern films that kind of stick with that kind of theme where you don't really see the monster. Like the one that comes to mind would be like maybe Cloverfield.
Yeah, that was a good one too. You would see that one kind of,
or Super 8.
Super 8 was another good one. Yeah,
like there's something there. It's there,
right?
And you don't really see it until like towards the end, and you're like, "Oh, that's what it is." But the whole time you're like, "What is it? What is it? What is it?"
Yeah.
Speaking of modern film, I watched this. It was a movie on Netflix, and it was like a horror film but about an alien. I'm gonna have to look it up.
All right. While you do that, I'll just quickly go through the list that Rotten Tomatoes has from the number one best Friday the 13th movie down to the worst, and I'll kind of talk about a little bit if I've seen them or not. Number one was Friday the 13th, like I said, the original, the very first one back in 1980. Then they say number two is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, from 86. Number three was Freddy vs. Jason, which kind of shocked me because I never saw that as a sequel to it, but I guess it did. It did kind of go with the same theme. I don't think you ever saw that one either, but it's literally just the way it says. It's Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies going up against Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th. And to me, it was more of an action movie than it was a horror movie, but it definitely had its horror elements in it. Number 4 is Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Number 5 is Friday the 13th Part 2. From 81. Oh, wow. They actually added number 6 was actually the remake of Friday the 13th they made back in 2009, which had a kind of a cool, different little twist to it. You could kind of see him being more of like a supernatural kind of killer rather than like a, I don't want to say like sneaky killer, but behind the scenes, more natural, I guess, killer. Number 7 was Jason X or Jason 10, which I thought was kind of a dumb one, like probably one of the worst ones, but I guess it could have a cult following. Like they went to space on that one, and it's like in the future and all that stuff, and they're gonna lock up Jason in like some type of prison cryogenic thing to study him up in space, and lo and behold, he gets out and starts killing people and kind of, I think there's like a weird like mutation where he tries to get like, new space age abilities and all this kind of different stuff. I don't know. It was odd. It was weird.
Right.
Number 8 was Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter from 84. Number 9 was Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, which came out right after the final chapter. So they kind of like, hey, we got you. We're bringing you back. Right. So number 10 was Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, which again was like, hey, we got you. Because then years later, they came out with another one. But then number 11 was Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Number 12 was Friday the 13th, Part 3, which, fun fact, in the third one is the first time you actually see full-on Jason Voorhees in the hockey mask. Prior to that, you either never saw him or he wore like a burlap sack on his head to cover his face. The one that they didn't add here, and the one that to me is probably one of my favorites, is Friday the 13th. I think it was part. Oh wait, no. Take that back. I'm thinking of a completely different franchise. I'm thinking of the Halloween franchise.
Oh, okay.
Halloween 3 was called Season of the Witch, and that was a complete. Yeah, that one was a good. That one was. It had almost nothing to do with Michael Myers. It was completely different. It had an idea of possibly what could have caused Michael Myers to go on the killing spree, but they didn't. I don't think they even mentioned Michael Myers in that movie. But yeah, that was a completely different movie. I got those two completely mixed up. Same kind of premise of killing, just kind of a, quote unquote supernatural killer, picking one day to kind of kill. So, I mean,
a little killing here, a little killing there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, those are the pretty cool movies.
Nice. So if you're feeling in a Friday the 13th kind of mood, there you go. Just pick one.
Exactly. And let's say that movies isn't quite your thing. Maybe, you're like out on the road. Maybe you're driving somewhere and you still kind of want to get that.
Kill somebody, right?
Well, sure. Okay. You can.
That's not what this.
Maybe if you,
about,
go postal, but but how about
done that.
But how about some Friday the 13th podcasts?
Oh yeah.
Much like this show itself.
Yeah, I mean you're listening to a good one, and give us some more.
So these are some Friday the 13th podcasts. There's Kill by Kill, taking horror characters one death at a time. That's the full title of the podcast. It says in each episode, Patrick Hamilton and Gina Radcliffe unpack all the gory details of horror cinema's least discussed topic, the characters. From Friday the 13th to Nightmare on Elm Street and beyond, our mission is to detail each hack, slash, and decapitation in the hopes that a victim's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we can make about them. There's also You're Doomed, which is a special Friday the 13th podcast, and all it says is Friday the 13th, just 13 minutes at a time.
Wow.
There's
stick to the 13
yeah,
motif.
Exactly. There's Two Guys on Friday, which is a podcast by Kevin and Mark. Two guys nerd out on the Friday the 13th franchise and their main guy, Jason Voorhees. They talk horror and everything in between. And according to them, they say that we will bring an orgasm to your ears.
Wow.
So that must be good.
It must be.
Then there's Nature Trail to Hell. Stefan Lawrence, a theme park designer from Los Angeles, has never seen any of the Friday the 13th movies, so you and him have something in common.
Yeah, we should hang out.
Yeah, maybe you guys can do the podcast together. You guys sit down, rewatch the Friday the 13th, and see what you guys think.
That sounds like a good idea.
Jordan D. White, the comic book editor from New York, has seen them all. Well, it's kind of like you and I. Well, I haven't seen them all, but it's kind of like, on that process, on that same road, I guess you could say. Together, they'll run the series and review the movies one at a time. See, they're just taking my ideas. Then there's another one called The 13th Warehouse, another 13. Warehouse 13 and Friday the 13th, the series podcast of two women who can't remember anything. It says that they go one episode
Sounds
a week.
like a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. It could possibly be. I mean, there are dark comedies, which are kind of, horror comedies.
True.
There's Camp Blood Radio, which is, while there's only so much that can be... Hold on one second. While there's only so much that can be said for Friday the 13th movies, we endeavor to say it all. General film discussion, interviews, and all things horror-related, sometimes with a comedic twist. From time to time, Camp Blood Radio will also touch on current events, world issues, and discussion on growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s. I might have to add some of these to my list of podcasts. So
you should. Maybe give them a whirl and then let me know what you think. And we can discuss on our next full-length normal episode.
Yeah.
And speaking of our full-length normal episode, I couldn't find that alien horror film that I was watching the other day. But for the next one, our next episode, I'll fill you in because that's probably all. Our next episode is probably going to be horror related.
Was it kind of a newer one?
Yeah.
Is it called? I think one of my coworkers were just talking about it. Is it something about like a girl murders another kid and then?
Well, you don't want to spoil it.
Well, I mean, this was this was in the, I think it was in the trailer, but I remember there was a scene where I saw in the trailer where she's like on a bus trying to leave out of town, and I guess somehow, some way, people are being possessed or being somehow controlled by, I guess, like an alien, and they were like crawling over the seats trying to attack her, and
that's the one. I watched it only because my wife was watching it, and she fell asleep because, it was late at night, but I'm like, I gotta see how this ends. Anyway, Marcelo, do me a favor, watch it, and maybe we can talk about it next episode.
If you give me 1 second, I might be able to find it pretty quick, actually, because I remember seeing it somewhere. No One Will Save You.
Yes.
And it was on Hulu, not Netflix. That's probably why you couldn't find it on Netflix.
Why I couldn't find it.
Okay, yeah. My coworker Ron was telling me about it. We should probably bring Ron on because he's also a horror fan. I mean, like bigger than I am, and he's also kind of a dorky, fun guy to hang around with. So he's
the more the merrier. I'd be down to have guests on the show.
He's definitely one that you could really talk horror for. I mean, that's all we talk about. Well, horror and South Park. So. But yeah, I remember seeing those previews.
Do you have Hulu?
I do.
You got to watch that one, and then let me know what you think.
The
alien one.
Yeah, I definitely will. Yeah.
Because there's more to it than just
aliens.
Aliens.
Yeah.
But the way it's filmed and what I found interesting, there's like, I want to say almost zero dialogue, so it's all acting. And it's interesting. That alone is pretty interesting. Also,
I think this was a movie that we were talking about before we got on here. You were saying something about it was called like Fright Night on Netflix. It was like a 3-parter.
Yes,
called Fear Street.
Oh, I called it Fright Night.
You called it Fright Night.
It was actually called
Fear Street.
There is
by
a
R.L. Stein.
Yes, there is a Fright Night though, so you weren't that far off. There's actually, I think there's maybe about two of them that was a one and a sequel. Then they remade it, and that's actually another one that you should watch too. Fright Night's actually a really good one.
Oh, so there is a Fright Night.
There is a Fright Night, and
but I was thinking Fear Street.
Right, yeah. Fright Night is actually a vampire movie. That's actually a really good vampire movie. I think I can't remember who did the original. It was a lot of good actors from like the 80s, 90s, that kind of era. But in the remake, they had like Colin Farrell was playing the head vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who the mom was, but the son or the main hero was. Did you ever see Star Trek the newer movies?
I did when it came out in theaters.
Do you remember the guy that played? I think it was McCoy. No. Take it back. It was the Russian guy.
Okay. It was a long time ago, and I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan in this room.
Well, I'm not either. I honestly haven't seen. I don't think I've seen any Star Trek movies, but I just know that this guy's in it. He's done a bunch of other stuff, but unfortunately, he passed away a while back. But Fright Night's probably one of the best movies he did, and it was actually a really good remake. As far as remakes go, it was actually really, really good. Cool. So you weren't that far off, in thinking that Fright Night was the movie name, but
Gotcha.
yeah, Fear Street, and I think like the titles was like Fear Street and then the year it took place. So it was like Fear Street 1986 and then like no Fear Street 1994. Remember it was like the 90s.
It was the 90s. The first one was the 90s.
And then it
went back
74.
It went to the 70s.
And then I think it was like 1774 or something like that.
1700s.
Yeah. So like they would go back like that. So there's trying to run down the podcast real couple more. There's the Critic's Seat, which podcasts cover different opinions, techniques, lightings, and other aspects of film. Then there's the Curious Goods podcast, which is again they're reviewing the Friday the 13th series from beginning to end. So that one should be pretty cool. And then Forever Friday, where they they spend a lot of time at Crystal Lake as they break down every Friday the 13th film in detail. So if you're into some Friday the 13th podcasts, maybe check some of those out. Like I said, I'm probably going to definitely be adding those to my list. Yeah. I mean, I listen to a lot of horror podcasts anyways, so
it'd be tell us what you think on the next episode.
It'd be a nice little fit, Yeah. So,
all right. Well, that's a fascinating list. So, growing up, did you ever believe any of these Friday the 13th superstitions? Like, did you go out of your way to if you saw a black cat, you would walk on the other side of the street, or if you saw a ladder propped up, you're like, well, I don't want to walk under that because something bad's going to happen. Did you ever those things cross your mind growing up?
Some of them did. Because my nana was pretty Catholic.
Uh-huh.
She wasn't hardcore super Catholic, but I mean she went would go to church every Sunday and all that kind of stuff. And she was the one that kind of got some of those things instilled in my head, like it was don't walk under a ladder, it's bad luck. Break a mirror, that's 7 years of bad luck or something like that.
7. I remember that one growing up.
And then I also remember this was more of a schoolyard thing where don't step on a crack or break your mother's back.
Mm-hmm.
So and
you'd see me walking home from school going large steps.
Yeah.
A step, a crack,
or kind of like in the words of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Mama, no. But yeah, I mean, some of them were just kind of
remember that seance episode of Fresh Prince? It just came to me when he said that when they go to a seance or a hex or something, and Will keeps making these jokes don't forget to practice safe hex.
No, dude, it's been so long since I've seen Fresh Prince.
All right, I'm gonna find the clips and I'm gonna send it to you.
Do it.
Anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to trail off.
But no, as far as like superstitions, there were some that I remember growing up, like, the ladder, the mirror, the cracks.
The black cat?
Black cat, well, see, to me, I was always a cat lover growing up, so I never saw them as,
evil.
Yeah, I mean, especially since, after you watch Hocus Pocus and you see Binks the cat and he's a black cat, he's not bad luck at all. Like, I mean, so like if you were to see that and see the black cat in there, you wouldn't really think of like black cats being bad luck.
Gotcha.
Maybe if you saw something like maybe like a Pet Cemetery kind of a thing, then yeah, I could see. But I mean, as far as me growing up, no, I never saw any animals as being bad luck.
Gotcha.
I just usually saw it as like, oh my god, look at the little kitty, like kind of a thing. So. But then again, that's just me. That's just the animal lover in me outweighing any superstition.
So, a long time ago on our podcast, we introduced a special segment called Jefe's House of Horrors. Now, first off, I think for newer listeners, because we are, we have returned from being on a long hiatus. But one, why do we call you Jefe?
That was a nickname you came up with.
Because you're the chief?
Yeah, well, at the time that we were really hanging out, like playing tennis, skating, volleyball, all that stuff, was when I had the drive, I guess you could say at the time. I don't know if you really call it a dream, but I guess more of a drive to be in the fire department. And the goal was to be a battalion chief.
A chief.
And so you were like, oh, you mean the Jefe?
The Jefe.
And I think from that, and then from me teaching you tennis, and just, like, I guess, like, teaching you, like, horror.
Like teaching
as well.
Coaching.
Right, yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
You just kind of went on to just calling me Jefe.
Jefe.
And then,
of our Latin roots.
Yeah.
It translates to chief.
Yeah.
And I started calling you El Jefe.
Yeah.
The chief.
Yep.
And you wear it, as a badge of honor.
Yeah. I have emails. I have, what did I do? I think there's like a couple like gamer tags on like little video games that I played on that stuff where I, incorporate it into that. Passwords,
Wow, I didn't know it stuck around that much.
Yeah, it did.
So
even like if I like had let's say a video game with like a car in it, and I was gonna put my like I create a license plate, I would put it on there El Jefe.
I think I have you in my phone as Marcelo Urquijo the Third. Parentheses El Jefe.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, you are El Jefe.
Yes.
That name has stuck around. And and I like alliteration. So we came up with Jefe's House of Horrors on an episode a long time ago, and we kind of abandoned it for a long time. But what better episode on this Simple Sessions to bring it back? Let's bring back Jefe's House of Horrors.
Please come in, have a seat, and I will tell you of stories from past. Such stories as the Andes flight disaster. Many people are reluctant to fly on Friday the 13th, but the Aviation Safety Network debunked the superstition by researching the rates of fatal plane crashes on the date and found it was actually lower than the average of the other days of the month. Still, a number of mysterious and tragic plane crashes have occurred on the infamous date. On Friday, October 13th, 1972, two major plane crashes occurred. One was a large plane that was carrying a Uruguayan rugby team. The other, a larger plane flying from Paris to Moscow. The death toll from both crashes was more than 200 passengers. While the Moscow-bound plane resulted in the death of everyone on board, 28 people survived the initial plane crash in the Andes. But they truly had to survive. The plane went down October 13th, but the sole 16 survivors were rescued 72 days after the crash. To endure the harsh climate of the mountains, the men did everything they could to survive. This included turning to cannibalism and eating the bodies of their dead teammates. Their tragic and harrowing stories was eventually retold in a book and film called Alive.
Please tell me that wasn't a true story.
That was 100% true.
Oh, no.
Our next tale is also 100% true.
There's more?
This is called the Black Friday Bushfires.
I don't think I can handle another House of Horrors.
Please sit back, relax, and enjoy. Weird natural disasters are also known to occur on the 13th. In October of 2006, a blizzard hit Buffalo, New York, leaving 22 inches of snow on the ground. In 1970, a deadly cyclone struck Bangladesh and killed at least 300,000 people. One particular disaster is remembered in Australia as Black Friday. Over a dozen towns were destroyed, and 71 people died from an uncontrollable bushfire in Victoria on Friday, January 13th, 1939. The day is memorialized as Black Friday to honor those who died. It is considered the worst bushfire in Australia's history. Over 4 million acres of land in Victoria was burnt. Our next tale.
No.
And our final tale.
Don't do this to me.
For the most recent visit to Hefe's House of Horrors is titled 38 Witnesses. The murder of Susan Kitty Genovese has gone down as one of the most shocking crimes in history. Not only because it involved the rape and murder of a young girl, but because there were a lot of witnesses. The New York Times reported a total of 38. The crime occurred on March 13th, 1964 in Kew Gardens, Brooklyn. Genovese was 28 and was attacked by Winston Mosley, 29, in the middle of a road that was surrounded by apartment buildings with windows overlooking the area. Yet no one called the police or intervened. Interviewed after the fact, the neighbors gave a myriad of excuses as to why they didn't call the police or try to stop the attacker. These included, "I was tired. I didn't want to get involved, and we thought it was a lover's quarrel." The police said that based on the timeline of Genovese's attack, there was a chance for her to have been saved, especially since she allegedly escaped from him twice, but then returned to stab her twice. Mosley recently died in prison at the age of 81, creating a sort of closure to a case that would later become the center of many psychology classes regarding the perplexing idea of the bystander effect. Thank you, listeners, for visiting Hefe's House of Horrors.
Unbelievable. I can't believe I walked in there. Man, you gave us a plane crash, a burning bush.
I don't know about that. I mean, I don't think that was me, dude. I mean, it may have sounded like me, but I actually went out for a walk. When I saw you walk over that way, I thought maybe like you were heading home to grab something, but I just kind of,
Wait, who was telling those stories?
I don't know. I mean, you were there, dude. I wasn't.
Oh,
That's weird.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That was extremely creepy. I think we need to end on a light note.
Well,
What do you say?
not too light. I mean, it is still Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
I mean, it is still Friday the 13th. I don't know where that weird little voice I felt came from, but yeah.
You okay, Marcelo?
I'm fine for now. Yeah, I think so. Let's just try to get on with the ending of it. Like, how do we usually end the podcasts?
All right. You know what it is. It's time for Friday the 13th Jokes with Heavy.
These are jokes that are themed Friday the 13th, so we can try to keep on brand.
Oh, cool. I'm excited.
What is Jason Voorhees' favorite fast food restaurant?
Jason Voorhees, he's a slasher, right?
He's the popular slasher from the Friday the 13th movies.
Oh, his favorite fast food restaurant?
Favorite fast food restaurant.
Oh, what is it?
Chick-fil-A. What's a good pasta to make on Friday the 13th?
I don't know.
Fettuccine Alfredo.
Afraid of?
Alfredo.
Wow.
What's the best advice for Friday the 13th?
Tell me.
For those who believe Friday the 13th is unlucky, pretend it's any other day like in the last 2 years. On Friday the 13th, I dreamt that a horse in armor was chasing me. It was a nightmare. Get it? Night.
Night.
Night, riding a horse, nightmare. What's the scariest thing to do on Friday the 13th?
I don't know.
Check your bank account.
Oh, because it's probably really sucky.
Because it's scary how broke you are.
Hey, that one was too real, man. That was too real.
Why can't you kill humor on Friday the 13th?
Why?
Because it's deadpan. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
B.
Be who?
Beware. It's Friday the 13th.
Are you being serious right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What's Jason Voorhees' favorite dessert?
I'm gonna have to say strawberry sherbet.
Ice cream.
Oh, hey, I was close.
Yeah, you were right around there, yeah. What does a sorority girl do when she wakes up on Friday the 13th?
I'm gonna say she checks her calendar first thing in the morning.
Nothing. She's dead. Well, if you've seen Friday the 13th, you would understand.
Oh, okay.
What desserts do black cats have on Friday the 13th?
I'm gonna say greenies.
Mice cream.
Mice cream. I actually like that one.
What store shouldn't you enter on Friday the 13th?
Oh man, it's gonna have a 13 in it. I know it.
The Ghostery store.
Oh, the Ghostery store.
And possibly one of my favorites right here. Cracking a serial killer joke on Friday the 13th is okay, as long as they are properly executed.
Wow. All right, Marcella. I think we've had enough of your.
I don't know. Something kind of
okay?
feels different.
All
I just
right.
kind of feel like I need to just say more. I don't get it. There's something about
You don't look so good.
there's something about this just doesn't. I can't. What should you avoid on Friday the 13th? Ladders, black cats, and ridiculous superstitions. Why was the killer relentlessly killing fat people on Friday the 13th? He wanted to be a mass murderer. How can you tell the difference between people and a ghost on Friday the 13th? You can see right through the ghosts.
Hey,
What's the safest place to hide on Friday the 13th? The living room.
We're done here. We gotta,
Why did the killer go on
gotta
Friday
go.
the 13th on primetime TV? He wanted to establish himself.
F it, like it's.
Where do
getting
ghosts
late.
go for family vacation after working
Gotta
on Friday
get
the
outta here,
13th?
man.
Budapest,
We
the
gotta get outta
Bahamas,
here.
and Malibu.
We gotta close this out, man.
What's worse than Friday the 13th?
F it.
Monday, the whatever.
F it. What's gone into you?
What are the similarities between Bill Cosby and
What's
Freddy Krueger?
happening?
Once you fall asleep, you're screwed. Why are black cats such excellent
911.
singers? They are
911.
musical. What sort of parties do generally organize on Friday the
Yes,
13th?
is this 911?
Search parties.
I think my friend just got possessed. Something's wrong.
What country does Jason Voorhees love to spend time in?
What's wrong? Oh, we started jokes with Hefe.
I don't get that one. But
And-
hey,
And he's still
who's
going.
targeting anti-vaxxers on Friday the 13th? COVID-19.
Yeah, he can't stop cracking Friday the 13th jokes.
What do you do if your house is overrun with ghosts?
Yeah.
Hope it's Halloween and not
You'll
Friday
be
the
here in 10
13th.
minutes. Okay. Yeah, we need you right away.
Yo, mama's so ugly, even Freddy Krueger has nightmares. Number 13 said, I'm the worst number in the world. Number 666 said, that's cute.
If you can hear me.
Number 2020 said, hold my
Help.
beer.
Help is on the way. Help is on the way.
Who is the unluckiest girl on Friday the 13th? Amber, because she's constantly getting kidnapped. Why do black cats
Why is this happening?
Why do black cats like to have the mornings of Friday the 13th? Mice Krispies. What happened when you propose to someone blind on Friday the 13th? They tell you that they're seeing someone else. What game is most played on Friday the 13th? Hide and Ghost Seek. Where can you find witches on Friday the 13th? The Scary Go Round. On Friday the 13th, which spot treatment should you avoid? The eyes cream.